In a world that rewards polished appearances and carefully crafted images, the deepest kind of attraction comes from something far more raw, from what most people are too afraid to reveal. What if the secret to becoming someone truly impossible to forget has nothing to do with being perfect, and everything to do with having the courage to show up exactly as you are? Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds ever to explore the human soul, uncovered a truth that cuts straight through the noise. We are not pulled toward what looks flawless. We are pulled toward what feels genuine. The 7 qualities that make a person truly unforgettable are not the ones the world keeps telling us to develop. They are the ones we have been conditioned to bury, to apologize for, to silence. But here is the thing that changes everything. The parts of yourself you have been hiding may be the very parts that make you impossible to replace. So many of us spend our lives perfecting the surface, the way we look, the words we choose, the image we project, while the real source of our power sits untouched underneath. That quiet, unshakable presence. That ability to walk into a room and actually be there without performing. The truth is, it was never about being the loudest voice. It was always about being the one whose absence is felt long after they have left. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius did not speak to leave an impression on others. He spoke to understand himself more clearly. Epictetus never sought the spotlight. He directed all of his energy inward. And that is the real measure of strength, owning who you are so completely that you no longer look outward for permission to take up space. If you have ever felt like you are somehow too much or somehow never quite enough, if you have given your best and still felt overlooked, then what follows is going to reshape how you see yourself. We are about to explore 7 truths that make a person unforgettable. Not through tactics, not through charm, but through becoming so deeply grounded in your own identity that nobody can fill the space you leave behind. If this kind of depth speaks to you, do one simple thing: hit subscribe. That is how we keep building this space together. Honest, real, and without filters. Let us begin. Here is something most of us never stop to admit. We are performing, and we have been for a long time. Not on a stage, not in front of cameras, just in our everyday lives, quietly editing ourselves to make the people around us more comfortable. We smooth out our emotions the same way we smooth out our photos. We post laughter when we are exhausted. We say we are fine because unpacking the truth feels like too much trouble, and eventually this becomes automatic. But the cost is enormous. When you spend too long playing a role, you begin to lose track of who exists underneath it. You surrender your authenticity in exchange for approval, and at some point, even the approval starts to feel hollow, because it was never really meant for you. Aristotle once wrote that knowing yourself is where all wisdom begins. But how can you ever truly know yourself if years have been spent becoming whoever the world seemed to want? This goes far beyond social media. It is the way we soften our opinions so we do not make waves. It is the way we shrink our enthusiasm so we do not come across as too eager. Somewhere along the way, most of us absorbed the message that being fully ourselves was dangerous, too loud, too intense, too inconvenient for the people around us. And yet, every single person who has ever shifted the course of history was exactly all of those things. Carl Jung wrote that the greatest privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. Not the version your family shaped, not the version your workplace rewards, not the version that keeps everyone else comfortable. You, the imperfect, evolving, unpolished version. That is where real power lives. Not in the carefully maintained image, but in the truth that sits beneath it. Jung built his entire life's work around the concept of individuation, the process of bringing together all the different parts of yourself, including the complicated ones, into a state of wholeness. And wholeness, when you actually encounter it in another person, is infinitely more compelling than perfection could ever be. Think about the people who have left a real mark on your life. Were they the ones who had it all figured out? Or were they the ones who made you feel like it was acceptable to be a work in progress? The people who spoke honestly, even when it was uncomfortable, who laughed freely and cried without shame. Those are the people we remember. Not because they were perfect, but because they were genuinely themselves. And in a world saturated with constructed images, that kind of realness is nothing short of radical. Socrates urged us not simply to live, but to examine our lives. And part of that examination means sitting with hard questions. Questions like, where am I pretending right now just to be accepted? Spend enough time with that question and the cracks will start to show. The places where you traded your truth for the comfort of fitting in. Those are not places of shame. They are places that deserve your honest attention, because that is where the masks are stored. And the moment you start removing them, you will feel something strange and unfamiliar, something that resembles freedom. People will tell you that being real is excessive, that you are too emotional, too quiet, too deep, too sensitive. But look more carefully at what those labels actually mean. Every version of too much is really just another way of saying hard to manage. And that is precisely the point. Epictetus taught that real freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want. It is the refusal to be controlled by anything that exists outside of you. The moment you stop reshaping yourself to fit inside someone else's comfort, you take that freedom back. You become someone who moves through the world from the inside out, not the other way around. Plato described a cave where people stared at shadows on a wall and mistook them for reality. How many of us are still in that cave, still mistaking the filtered, more digestible version of ourselves for who we actually are? But authenticity has never been digestible. It is layered and complex and sometimes uncomfortable. And it is completely worth it. Because when you finally stop hiding, something shifts. The people who are meant to be in your life find you, not the ones who merely tolerate your presence, but the ones who recognize something of themselves in you. And those who were never ready for your truth simply drift away, quietly, without conflict. Let them. You were never meant to shrink yourself into something easier to swallow. You were meant to be whole, fully alive, fully expressed, at peace even with your own contradictions. Not everyone will understand that, and that is fine. You do not need a crowd. You need a few people who genuinely see you and choose you because of who you are, not despite it. So the next time you feel yourself playing it small, putting on a face to ease someone else's discomfort, stop. Ask yourself one question. Is this actually me, or is this the version they will accept? That single question has the power to reorient everything. Because self-respect does not begin with drawing lines in the sand. It begins with honesty. And the most essential honesty is the kind you owe to yourself. In the end, we are not remembered by the number of people who liked us. We are remembered by the depth of truth we shared with the few who truly mattered. Let people feel your presence rather than simply observe it. Let the realness of who you are speak louder than any curated image. And let that truth be the thing that makes you impossible to forget. Everyone says they want to grow, but very few people understand what genuine growth actually demands. Because it is not just about reading more, achieving more, or becoming more productive. Real growth means releasing old versions of yourself without losing the core of who you are in the process. It means choosing to evolve, not because someone applauded you for it, but because you are becoming more aligned with your truest self. And if we are being honest, a lot of people confuse growth with shape-shifting. They change who they are based on who is watching. But adapting to blend in is not the same as genuinely becoming. One adjusts your surface, the other reshapes your foundation. Plato said that the greatest victory anyone can achieve is the victory over themselves. That is where real transformation lives. Not in impressing others with how far you have come, but in looking at yourself honestly and knowing that each step forward was freely chosen. Not performed for an audience, not made out of survival, not another mask. A quiet, grounded decision to grow, not for them but for you. The Stoics had a clear-eyed understanding of this. Marcus Aurelius wrote a reminder to himself. Stop wasting time debating what a good person looks like and simply be one. No theater, no announcement, just the daily embodiment of values. For the Stoics, growth was never measured in achievements. It was measured in character, in becoming someone whose internal world was not at the mercy of external noise. While others chased status or performed contentment, the Stoics were committed to the quiet, unglamorous work of inner development. The kind of work that actually lasts. Here is what matters, though. Evolving does not require you to become unrecognizable. It means refining what was already there. You do not discard your essential self. You expand it. Think of it like upgrading a phone. It still looks like yours. It still functions like yours. But now it runs with greater clarity, greater efficiency, greater capacity. That is exactly how personal growth works. You are not becoming someone entirely new. You are clearing out the old programming, resolving the internal conflicts, and unlocking capabilities you always had but never fully accessed. Carl Jung described individuation as the process of becoming truly whole. Part of that process involves releasing the parts of yourself that were constructed out of fear, out of a need to please, a need to avoid pain, a need to keep others comfortable. Not everything you picked up along the way was meant to follow you forever. Some of your habits, your beliefs, your identities, they were tools built for survival. They served their purpose. But now they are holding you back. The moment you recognize that is the moment you begin to grow consciously. Not because you are reacting to pain, not because you need to prove anything, but because you have arrived at a deeper understanding of what you actually need. And here is something important to name. Choosing growth does not mean rejecting who you are right now. It means caring about yourself too much to stay exactly where you are. That distinction matters. People who are afraid of change tend to confuse growth with self-rejection. But genuine growth is actually an act of profound self-respect. It says, I value where I am, and I also refuse to let it be my ceiling. Socrates believed that a life without honest self-examination was not worth living. When you begin to examine your own life, not with harsh judgment, but with genuine curiosity, you start to see patterns, where you have moved forward, where you are stuck, where you have quietly compromised your values just to occupy spaces that never truly felt like home. That kind of honest seeing is power, because you cannot shift what you are unwilling to face. But once you see it clearly, the power comes back to you. You realize you do not need anyone's approval to become the next version of yourself. You can simply begin. Growth is rarely graceful. It is not a constant highlight reel. Sometimes it is uncomfortable. Sometimes it is isolating. Sometimes it means walking away from people who only connected with the older, more compliant version of you. Let them go. Because you did not come here to keep everyone comfortable. You came to stay awake to your own life. Aristotle wrote that we are what we do repeatedly, that excellence is not a single act, but a formed habit. Growth operates the same way. It is not one dramatic leap. It is the daily decision to choose reflection over impulse, intention over reaction, depth over convenience. You will not always get it right. The goal is not perfection. It is momentum. It is becoming the kind of person whose growth does not need to be announced, because it is visible in the way they carry themselves. You will know you are genuinely evolving when your calm becomes louder than your anxiety, when the things that used to shake you now simply teach you. When the people you once chased stop mattering because you have become too clear about who you are and where you are heading to be distracted by their approval. So if something in you is signaling that it is time to change, trust that signal. Do not wait for disaster. Do not wait for permission. You are allowed to outgrow what once felt like home. Growth is not betrayal. It is fidelity to your deepest truth. And when it comes from your values rather than your fears, it becomes something no one can strip from you. You do not grow in order to be loved. You grow because you already love yourself enough to keep moving. And that unstoppable commitment to becoming is what makes you unforgettable. Society has been selling us a particular lie for a very long time, that in order to be loved, respected, or remembered, we need to be without flaw. That we must sand down every rough edge, bury every failure, and present a polished exterior like armor. But here is what nobody tells you until you are exhausted from keeping up the performance. Perfection does not create connection. Pain does. Struggle does. Raw, undefended humanity does. Nobody bonds with someone over how seamlessly their life appears. They bond over the moment someone got knocked to the ground and found a way to stand back up. Aristotle said that real self-knowledge does not come from cataloguing your strengths. It comes from being willing to face your shadows, from looking at the parts of yourself that did not always handle things well and saying clearly, "This is part of me, and I will not pretend otherwise." Because shame feeds on concealment. The moment you bring what you have been hiding into open air, it begins to lose its hold. And in that moment, your power starts to return. Carl Jung put it this way: what you resist persists, and what you accept transforms. The piece of you that you have been quietly tucking away, the one you are convinced makes you unlovable, too messy, too emotional, too complicated, that piece may well be your greatest source of strength. It may be the very quality that allows someone else to feel genuinely seen, or the thing that points someone else toward their own path through darkness. But if you bury it out of fear, you rob both yourself and the world of what makes you uniquely real. Every one of us carries marks, emotional, psychological, sometimes physical, and we have been surrounded by a culture that insists we cover them up. Conceal your sensitivity, hide your past, perform your way through the parts that still hurt. But those marks are not evidence of weakness. They are proof that you lived through something, that you felt it deeply, moved through it honestly, and did not give up. That resilience, that refusal to collapse, is magnetic. People do not hold on to the memory of someone who never struggled. They hold on to the one who struggled and kept going anyway. Epictetus taught that what happens to us does not define us. How we choose to respond does. Your mistakes and your failures are not your identity, but the way you face them, that is your character. That is the story people carry with them. And stories do not move people when everything goes smoothly. They move people when the central figure walks directly into the fire and refuses to be destroyed by it. Socrates said simply, "Be as you wish to appear." Not polished, not untouchable, just honest. Because people are not searching for someone to admire from a distance. They are searching for proof that being human in all its complication is not something to be ashamed of. And when you walk in showing all of yourself, the healed parts and the still healing ones, you become a reflection. You show people that it is possible to be real and still be standing. Think carefully for a moment. What is the one thing you have been keeping hidden because you feared it made you lesser? What chapter have you kept closed because you worried how people would respond if they knew? What if that part of your story, the one you have treated as a liability, is actually the part that makes you impossible to forget? What if the thing you carry with the most shame is the exact thing someone else needs to hear in order to feel less alone in their own experience? Plato believed that truth was not only found in the external world, it resided within us. And what deeper truth exists than standing fully in your own experience and saying, "Yes, I have fallen. Yes, I have failed. And yes, I am still here." That is not a confession. That is a declaration of survival. That is you refusing to minimize yourself for anyone's ease. The world has more than enough filtered personalities. What it needs is people who have been worn down by life and chose not to become hardened by it. People who still feel deeply after being hurt, who still show up fully even when it costs them something. That kind of presence stays with you. That is the energy that walks into a room and changes the temperature. You do not owe an apology to the older version of yourself. They worked with what they had. You honor them not by erasing what they went through, but by building something stronger on top of it. Your past is not a weakness. It is the foundation of everything that makes you credible, real, and worth remembering. There is a quiet, anxious hunger that lives inside many of us without ever announcing itself. The need to be selected, to be noticed, to be told by someone else that we are enough. It starts early. We learn to raise our hands and wait, to be agreeable, to make ourselves palatable enough that someone finally chooses us. But here is the thing nobody warned us about. The more desperately you pursue being chosen, the more estranged you feel from any real sense of belonging. Because being chosen hands your power to someone else. It sends the message that you cannot fully believe in your own worth until someone else confirms it. That is not love. That is the pursuit of external validation wearing love's clothing. The shift that transforms everything is this: stop waiting to be selected. Start deciding who is worth your presence. That single reorientation is not a small adjustment. It is a complete change in how you move through the world. Because now, instead of making yourself smaller to fit inside someone else's life, you are standing in your own and asking whether they deserve to be there. Not from arrogance, from self-awareness. Seneca wrote that we must keep learning how to live for as long as we draw breath. And part of that learning means understanding that genuine belonging cannot be begged for. You were not placed here to audition for connection. You are not a product competing for a buyer's attention. You are a human being, layered, evolving, full, and the people who are truly meant to be part of your life will not require convincing. They will simply recognize something in you that resonates. Jung observed that people tend to project their own unresolved needs onto others. So when someone makes you feel as though you must constantly prove your worthiness of love, what they are likely revealing is their own inability to perceive value without a performance attached. That is their work to do, not yours to absorb. Your work is this: understanding that you are the one with the power to decide who gets access. Your life is your domain. Your energy is not a resource available to everyone simply because they show up and ask. Imagine how your relationships would shift if, instead of wondering whether someone liked you, you began asking whether they aligned with who you are becoming. Not the version of you that craves applause or settles for scraps of attention. The version that is grounded, growing, and committed to choosing peace. When that becomes your lens, something profound happens. The question shifts from how to be more appealing to how to live more authentically. And when you operate from that place, something changes in how others perceive you, not because you performed better, but because you stopped performing entirely. Plato said the measure of a person is found in what they do with the power they possess. And the most genuine, grounded form of personal power comes from having standards. From knowing that love and closeness and real intimacy are not things that can be chased. They are things that arrive naturally when they come from the right source. You have the authority to decide who moves closer and who remains at a distance. Not as a game, as a form of self-protection, because the peace you have worked to build is valuable. Do not give it away carelessly. There is a kind of confidence that requires no words, a quality of presence that does not need to perform to be felt. When you stop chasing the approval of others, people sense it. They sense your self-respect. They sense that you will not bend yourself to accommodate their comfort at the expense of your own. And something in them responds to that. Something in them quietly recognizes that this person is different. This is someone I would rather not lose. That is what makes you unforgettable. Not volume, not agreeableness, but wholeness. The fact that you did not distribute yourself carelessly to everyone who offered a momentary smile. So going forward, stop measuring your worth by the number of people who want your attention. Measure it by how faithfully you are living in alignment with yourself. When you show up carrying that kind of intention, people feel it. More importantly, you feel it. You move differently. You choose with greater clarity. You no longer require being chosen because you have already chosen yourself. And that one shift changes everything. There is a quiet social agreement that most people accept without realizing it. Do not feel things too strongly. Do not care too visibly. Do not speak with too much passion. Stay relaxed. Stay manageable. Stay easy. But if we are being completely honest, none of that produces real connection. It produces distance. It produces a performance. It gradually turns you into a muted, diminished version of who you actually are. If you have ever been told that you are too much, too emotional, too passionate, too sensitive, too intense, I want you to really hear this. That is not a character defect. That is evidence of being alive. You feel things deeply because you actually care. You express yourself with intensity because something in you refuses to go through life at a surface level. You are not too much. You are simply not easy to overlook. Jung believed that our emotional lives were not meant to be suppressed. They were meant to be integrated. He wrote that there is no path to genuine awareness that does not pass through difficulty. The intensity you carry is not designed to break you. It is designed to wake you up. It is the part of you that refuses to accept a shallow existence. Yes, that intensity will unsettle some people. But their discomfort is not your responsibility. More often than not, that discomfort reveals their own limitations, not yours. Emotional depth is not fragility. It is a form of intelligence. Aristotle spoke of moderation as a virtue, but not in the sense of suppressing your essential nature. He meant mastering it, feeling fully without drowning in it, caring deeply without losing yourself in the process. That is the distinction between chaos and genuine courage. And the courage required to remain emotionally open in a world that aggressively promotes numbness is real. Most people scroll past life. They build distance from anything that asks them to feel. You choose to stay present. You choose to remain open. That is not weakness dressed up as sensitivity. That is rare. People call you too much because intensity resists control. It makes demands on others to be present. It asks real questions. And that level of honesty makes those who are still hiding behind their own masks deeply uncomfortable. Your passion holds up a mirror to their indifference. Your willingness to feel forces them to acknowledge their own numbness. Your truth sits uncomfortably next to their avoidance. So rather than face that discomfort, they assign you a label. Too much, too complicated, too emotional. That is not an accurate description of you. That is projection. The Stoics never advocated for the suppression of emotion. They taught its mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote that your power is over your own mind, not over external circumstances, and that recognizing this is where real strength begins. That includes your emotional life. You do not need to turn yourself down. You need to learn to direct your energy, to let what you feel inform your choices rather than override them. That is emotional maturity. That is what genuinely sets you apart. Knowing yourself means knowing the depth of what you feel and refusing to treat that depth as a flaw. It means recognizing that your sensitivity is not a vulnerability. It is precision. It is your ability to detect what is true in a room. It is why your intuition is sharper than most. It is why the people who really know you feel seen in your presence in a way they cannot quite explain. You are not too much. You are simply not willing to make yourself smaller to fit someone else's comfort. You are not willing to feign indifference about things that genuinely matter to you. You are not willing to turn away from depth. That is not difficulty. That is integrity. And in a world that teaches disconnection as a survival skill, choosing to remain open is an act of real courage. So the next time someone suggests you are too much, let it go. You are not shrinking yourself to fit inside the boundaries of someone else's comfort. You are expanding into the full range of who you are. And the right people, those who are meant to be genuinely close to you, will never ask you to become less. They will choose to meet you exactly where you are. Something quietly extraordinary happens inside a person the moment they truly decide they deserve better. It does not announce itself loudly. It arrives as a stillness, a calm, settled presence that says simply, I am done settling. And in that moment, everything shifts. The old dynamics stop working. The one-sided friendships, the draining conversations, the endless tolerating and pretending, they begin to lose their grip. Not because the outside world changed, but because something internal did. Because once you genuinely know your own worth, the begging ends. The chasing ends. You stop searching for fragments of attention or scraps of affection. You become someone who waits for what is actually real. Epictetus said, never value anything as beneficial to yourself that requires you to break your word, surrender your dignity, or resent another person. The translation is clear. If maintaining a relationship requires you to betray yourself in the process, the price has already become too high. And the people who have arrived at that understanding, who can walk away cleanly without burning everything behind them, they cannot be manipulated. They cannot be guilted into remaining in spaces that cost them their peace. Most people are not afraid of losing someone who depends on them. What they are afraid of losing is someone who had choices and still chose to stay. That distinction is everything. When you develop a clear sense of what energizes you and what depletes you, your decisions stop originating from loneliness. They start coming from clarity. And clarity is magnetic. It makes others want to earn a place in your life, rather than simply assuming one. Jung said that the most terrifying act is to accept yourself fully. But once you do, you stop looking to others to complete that acceptance for you. And when you stop performing for love, when you stop trying to earn what should be freely given, people begin to see who you actually are. That version of you, grounded, self-respecting, unwilling to negotiate your core, is the version that people do not want to lose. Because that kind of presence is stabilizing. It is honest. It is genuinely rare. Boundaries are not walls. They are something more like filters. They do not repel the right people. They make space for them. They communicate clearly. Here is what I will welcome and here is what I will not. Not because I lack warmth, but because I possess clarity. And that clarity keeps your energy protected. It ensures you are not spending all of your time recovering from things that never should have been allowed through in the first place. If you are exhausted from being overlooked and undervalued, the answer is probably not to try harder at fixing people who have no interest in changing. The answer is to build a different standard, a new way of showing up that does not bend to maintain a false peace. Because peace that requires you to abandon your own self-worth is really just another name for slow self-erasure. Recognizing what you deserve does not make you arrogant. It makes you honest. It means you have finally stopped treating yourself as less. And that recognition reshapes everything. The way you communicate, the way you love, the choices you make. You stop accepting partial effort, divided attention, conditional truth. You do not require perfection, but you require consistency. You stop asking whether you are expecting too much and start asking why you accepted so little for so long. Aristotle said that what we do repeatedly becomes who we are. So make self-respect a habit. Make the quiet refusal to betray your own values a daily practice. Make choosing your own peace over someone else's comfort your natural response. The world adjusts. Those who were wrong for you will gradually move away. Those who are right will step closer. Your standards are not a barrier. They are an invitation to the right people and a clear signal to everyone else. There is a kind of love that arrives as weight, as pressure, as a voice whispering, "Please do not leave. I cannot be okay without you." It is not malicious, but it is heavy. It is the kind of love that wraps itself around another person so tightly that it eventually suffocates what it was trying to hold. And the reason it does this is because it was never really love being offered. It was need. When you love from a place of internal emptiness, love becomes a transaction, a quiet, unspoken plea for emotional rescue. You are not giving. You are asking someone to fill the space inside you that only you can actually reach. And no matter how sincere that need is, it eventually wears on both people. Jung said that the most terrifying act in human experience is to accept yourself completely. But it is also precisely where real love begins. Because when you have genuinely accepted yourself, without conditions, without exceptions, your love stops being something you need in order to survive. It becomes something you consciously choose to offer. You stop handing people your broken pieces and hoping they can reassemble you. You arrive whole, and when you are whole, your love becomes something entirely different. It becomes light. It lifts rather than burdens. It creates space rather than filling it with anxiety. We have been taught to confuse intensity with love, to mistake clinging for closeness. But genuine connection is not built on the fear of losing someone. It is built on the ongoing freedom to choose them again and again without desperation driving the decision. That kind of love is uncommon because it is not rooted in possession. It is rooted in presence. It says, "I am here because I want to be here, not because I would unravel without you." The Stoics taught that our inner peace should never be held hostage by circumstances outside our control. Epictetus wrote that only the truly educated are free. And in this context, emotional education means freedom from the belief that you need external validation to feel worthy. Freedom from giving love primarily in hope of receiving it back. When you have done the work, when you have genuinely filled your own life, you stop pursuing love. You begin to emanate it. And that quality of presence is magnetic. When someone walks into a space carrying calm confidence, radiating a joy that exists independently of anyone else, you feel it. There is something grounding in it, something healing, something people are instinctively reluctant to lose. Not because it flatters their ego, but because it calls something real out of them. Something they had forgotten was possible. That kind of presence cannot come from someone running on empty. It comes from someone who knows they are already complete, and whatever they offer comes from genuine abundance, not from a place of desperate need. Socrates once observed that love born from obsession, from the need to be completed by another, burns intensely and ends coldly. But love that flows from a full life, from peace that has been earned, from joy discovered in your own quiet, that love does not burn out. It matures. It breathes. It does not collapse beneath the weight of its own need, because it is not asking to be rescued. It is offering companionship along a path already being walked. This is why building your own life first is so essential. not later. Not once the right person appears. Now, because if you are arriving empty to every relationship, you will drain each one in an attempt to satisfy a hunger only inner work can address. But when you arrive full, when you have spent real time healing, understanding yourself, building a genuine sense of your own worth, you will love from overflow. And the people who deserve to be close to you will not try to consume what you have built. They will honor it. Aristotle described the highest form of love as virtuous friendship, a bond between two people who genuinely seek what is best for each other and for themselves. That kind of love does not cling or control. It strengthens both people. It gives each of them room to become more of who they truly are. And you only arrive at that kind of love by being whole before you show up for it. So ask yourself honestly, am I loving from a wound or from wisdom? Am I opening my heart from fear or from genuine freedom? Because love should never feel like a rope you are holding on to keep from falling. It should feel like light extended between two people who are both already standing. The truth is, you do not need someone to complete you. You need someone who honors the wholeness you have already built. That is the kind of energy people are afraid to lose. That is the kind of presence that, once experienced, cannot easily be replaced. Take care of yourself first. Build your inner life with intention. Know your worth not as something to be proven, but as something to be lived. And then when you love, let it be an expression of everything you already are, not a plea for someone to tell you what you are worth. The right ones will not just stay. They will protect what you have built, because they will recognize that they are in the presence of something genuine, something whole, something rare. And so will you. The most unforgettable quality you will ever carry is the quiet, unshakable knowing that you are complete, without needing to prove it, perform it, or chase it. When you choose yourself first, the right people will not ask you to shrink. They will grow alongside you. If something in this resonated, there is another video on screen right now that will take you even further into these ideas. It is worth your time. Thank you for being here and for being part of Stoic Journal. This is not just a philosophy channel. It is a space for becoming. Slowly, intentionally, powerfully. The journey continues, and we will be right here when you are ready for the next step.